Yogesh Srimad Acharya, Santini, Janani, Sri Guru. Actually, what Dr. Shindeji said, there's a slight twist to that. He was actually, this is what actually happened. So when he was in Chennai, I've gone to the Acharya there, and he was there doing some social work and so on. I met him, and so when he found out that I was coming to the US, he gave me a contact of some hospital, I don't remember, some Ohio or somewhere, and said that if you ever want to, feel free to write to me, and we can correspond. So a few months later, I ended up in the US for the first time. And I come from southern part of Bangalore. There's some couple of my friends from Bangalore, and I had very little exposure to anything outside. In those days, it's not like today. Kids know everything today, because of internet and all that. In those days, we didn't know anything. So when I landed here, the cultural shock was way too much. I really could not handle it at all. And I was very, very seriously considering just going back to India. And at that time, I remembered Dr. Shindeji, and so I wrote a letter to him. And he actually wrote a wonderful letter that made me stay back. So it is much more than just corresponding. So that's the reason I remember it so well. Because I used to think of so many times, I didn't know where he was and all that, and destiny brought us together. So let's talk about, I suggested a few topics, and the Bharatiya Vichar Manch leadership said, why don't we talk about preservation of Vedic knowledge, that's one of the things. Because I do some work in that area. In a way, I would say that very title itself in a way is an oxymoron, in a way. When you think about Vedic knowledge, the question is what exactly is Vedic knowledge and what does preservation mean? Because you can say all these fancy things, but if you think a little bit deeper about that thing, then it takes on a totally different meaning. So when you look at Vedic knowledge, if you look at the Vedas themselves, the question is what are the Vedas? Are we talking about just the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samveda, and so on? The actual things that are in words, or is it something beyond that? For example, 5,200 years ago, Veda Vyasa, the way we know the Vedas today, that's what he gave us. So does it mean that 6,000 years ago there were no Vedas? Or 7,000 years ago, 8,000? Well, they say that if you look at the basic definition of what a Veda is, it's something that is eternal truth. It is something that has to be true for every single person, every single place, so it should have no boundaries of time or space. So if it is no boundaries, then obviously it should have always said Anadi and Ananta, as I put it, no origin and no end. It's always there. So if something has always existed and shall always exist, where is the question of preservation? What do you mean by preservation? So what is it that we are talking about? What exactly are we trying to preserve, if at all we are trying to preserve, and so what does that actually mean? Right? So it's worth thinking about that a little bit, because we always focus on the manuscripts, and if we do in my foundation we do preserve manuscripts, and sometimes even my own students come and say, oh, can you give me an English translation of this? The person asks for the person sitting there. And my thing is this, I'll give you an example. Suppose there is a book on, say, quantum mechanics, for example. Right? I come from electronics background, professional. Right? So suppose there's some very advanced, like a PhD level textbook on, say, quantum mechanics, for example. Right? If you were to, let's say it's written in English, okay, English language, and let's say I know English, I happen to know English, suppose. Does it mean I can understand that? No, unless I have the background for that. If I have the background, it's one thing. But it's not a question of just language, it's not a question of translation. There's much, much more to it than that. And actually the Vedic tradition and the Vedic way of thought actually goes into all aspects of life. It's not about just philosophy or something like that. It pervades every single thing. It's what you eat, how you eat, every single aspect of life, it completely covers that. And the actual Vedic knowledge if you want to call it that, is something that has been there for a long, long time. So, at the beginning, at the introduction of Bharat, Vichar, Manch, he's saying that you bring academicians and activists and somebody else. I don't know, I was introduced as a professor, so which it's true, I'm a professor of engineering. But actually when I stand in front of you talking about this topic, I don't have the arrogance that as an academic, somehow I'm a scholar and I know things you don't know, and so I'm telling you this. Actually, I would like to represent myself more as a very, very humble spokesman for the thousands of Vedic rishis that have graced this planet for a long, long time. So if you look at it from that perspective, not so much about who cares about my scholarship, who cares about me. I'm just a little speck of dust in this entire thing, right? But the Vedic way of life and the Vedic thought process is something that is much, much, much broader than that. So I really think that we should look at everything that I'm going to say from that perspective, not as some scholar telling you something, right? So, first thing is that, one thing I've got to mention is that they say there's a philosophical debate about whether the Vedas are Paurashaya or Paurashaya. That is, did somebody write it or nobody wrote it? It's both yes and no. The Vedic manuscript as we know it today was written, but the knowledge, the Vedas themselves, it's Apaurashaya, it's always been there. Because something is true, it's just true, whether you write it down or not, it's true, right? So in that sense, people say that it's Apaurashaya. One of the things that is pervading our society today is information technology. Half the Indian people probably in California work in IT field, right? My question is, information technology is fine, we talk about data science and all these things, right? Data mining, data science and so on. There is a huge, huge overflow of information. You pick any topic, it doesn't matter. I can go to Google, I can type in any word and it just spews out like 1,000 things about every single thing. This is just information. There is nothing to do with knowledge, nothing to do with wisdom. We talk about jnana. We're not talking about information, we're talking about jnana, right? And there is no real translation to the English. We always have this problem when we go back and forth between Sanskrit and English. Every single language, in my opinion, is a manifestation, it's an external manifestation of a culture and a way of thought. So if we don't have a concept, if a concept is not something that is part of your lifestyle, why would you have a word for that? Right? It has to be part of your lifestyle. That's why we have so much trouble translating to English. I'll give you one simple example, very simple example. In Sanskrit and also in most of our Indian regional languages, we use the word lakshana. Most of you who are from India, the moment I say lakshana, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you try to translate that to English, it's almost impossible. Because the concept of lakshana is not there in the Western culture. Because it's not a part of the culture, there is no word for that. So how do you translate from one language to another? In a real sense, you really cannot truly translate anything at all. So information, if it has to become knowledge, and that has to become wisdom, or again, that's the closest word I can think of. If you look at jnana, according to our way of thinking, that jnana is actually separated into three different types of jnana. Because yathartha jnana, viparita jnana and ajnana. Those are the three types of jnanas that we have. Right? Yathartha jnana is that jnana which, yathartha just means resourceful. Resourceful, something that's a resource for me. So yathartha jnana is something that takes me upwards. Ajnana is something that takes me downwards. And viparita jnana that takes me in circles horizontally. Right? Now, when you look at Vedic manuscripts, all of these three things are there. See, they don't just give you yathartha jnana, they give you other things too. Because they want you to know what is Vedic. See, this is where people get confused. They say, anything Vedic, they say, it must be true, right? Well, it is true, but it is true in what sense? Where will it take you? If I tell you that this particular thing is going to take you downstairs, it is true, it's a fact. But the question is, do I want to go downwards or do I want to go upwards? Adaptive jnana is something that takes you upwards. And the thing is that the transformation of information to knowledge, knowledge to wisdom, that process in the Vedic concept, because if you don't understand this whole concept of preservation doesn't make any sense at all, right? So this transformation, information you get plenty. I can give you a printed a manuscript of any Purana that you want. I have access to those things. I can give you Vichar, tell me, by the way, today is Upakarma, right? Today is Upakarma, yesterday was Yajur Upakarma. All of these things has become more sort of like a religious connotation is what it has taken. The actual jnana part in that thing, unfortunately, has been thrown out of the window, right? Unfortunately. So it's become more of it's all like emotion for us. More than jnana, more than wisdom, more than having something that is solid, that is full of weight, which is what we have to preserve. Because if you preserve that, then all other things will sort of fall into place, right? There's one other concept. Lately, I've noticed that, like Dr. Shindeji was saying, I was fortunate that just about a month ago, I was touring in Bharat and I happened to go to Delhi. I was in IIT Delhi and JNU, some other places, and a bunch of places. One thing I noticed, common, wherever I went, whichever university I went to, the new buzz phrase, okay, is Vedic science. Everybody talks about Vedic science, Vedic science. What the heck is Vedic science, And people say, is it scientific or not? Is it thing scientific or not scientific? My question to some of these young people is that in the first place, before you can say whether it's scientific, not scientific, maybe it is, maybe it's not, that's a second question. My first question to you is, and this is me talking to young people, my question is, how do you define science? What is your, for me to say this thing is scientific or not scientific, you have to first define science. Otherwise, how do you say whether it's scientific or not scientific? So if you look at the science, I'm an engineer by the way, but if you look at science, pure science, there must be many scientists here, I don't know, but any science, it doesn't matter what it is, always starts off with a hypothesis, isn't it? Like in my own field, if you, those of you who come from electronics background, now if you look at Bohr's atomic model, for example, so this fellow came along and he said, okay, there's this thing called the nucleus and there are electrons going around there. Okay. He didn't see that. I didn't see that. He just said that. So then we said, either it's true or it's not true. You cannot have partial truth. Either there are some things called electrons that are going around or there is no such thing. Then we design a set of experiments where under controlled environment, we run this experiment that will tell me whether the thing called the electron exists or not exists. And if consistently I find that the experiment goes one particular way, then I reach the conclusion, oh, there must be such a thing. 44 years I spent in electronics, field of electronics, in various capacities. I made a good living in the field of electronics. And to this day, I'm not seeing even one electron. So I can say it's not scientific. It doesn't make sense. This whole thing doesn't make sense at all. I would actually classify that into three different things. Okay? This is my own thing. You may agree, you may not agree. That's a different issue. I would claim that there is Vedic science. There is Vedic science. There is Vedic engineering. What do you mean like that? There's Vedic engineering. And I would claim there is Vedic technology also. Right? So what is the difference between these three things? If there is any difference. Well, if you look at something laukika, something material, right? Well, for example, I can say that there is physics is a science. Physics is a science. Electrical engineering is engineering, as the name says. Then we also have technology, like information technology. That's a technology. That's neither science nor engineering. It's a technology, right? So what is the main difference between these three things? Well, I would claim that scientists are purists. Right? They're purists. And they don't really care They love that stuff. They just love it. And just for the sheer pleasure of it, they do things. It's not so much for solving any problem. People like me, I'm an engineer. Science is fine. Matter of fact, I started in physics. I've got a BSc honors in physics. And then said, this is not my thing, so I went into electrical engineering. Engineers, what they like to do is they take that science that the scientists, by the way, the starting point is science, so it's very important. I'm not in any way being disrespectful to scientists, but the thing is, for it to be useful for us, it has to solve problems, right? So when you take science and use that science to solve problems, that's what I call engineering, right? But I can build a prototype, I can make something work and say, hey, look, this thing does whatever you're looking for. That doesn't make it affordable for the common man. So technology is something that takes the output of engineering and mass produces that and make it affordable for you and me. This is true for a cell phone. If you actually, I'm a chip designer, that's my field. Just to let you know, like one of those chips inside your cell phone, if you want to just send it for fabrication just one time, prototyping time, you spend like $500,000. Yet the whole phone is sold for whatever it costs, I don't know how much it costs, $1,000, whatever it is, right? So that is technology, taking that thing, mass producing that, and making it affordable and usable, and also usable without deep understanding of previous technology. So what we really need is not just Vedic science, but we also need Vedic engineering, and we also need Vedic technology to be useful for the common. It has been done before, by the way, it's nothing new. In our school days, when we were in high school, right, we were told that if you look at sunlight, they said there are 7 colors in there. In India, they say Vichar, and I don't know, some violet, indigo, blue, blah, 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 coming all the way to red, right? So looking at sunlight, I'm giving a simple example. Looking at sunlight and determining that it has 7 components is science. That is science. What does it do for me? Nothing. It just happens to be there. Whether I know it or not, whether I understand it or not, that light is shining, right? That energy is coming, and it's there. The Vedic part of that. Now that everybody knows, like high school, middle school, they taught us that, right? Take a prism or something, you'll see the 7. That's not a big thing. I'll tell you the Vedic component of that. Our Vedic rishis not only saw those 7 colors, they went beyond that actually. Actually, they went beyond that. I'm just going to give you the summary. If somebody is interested in more depth, I'm happy to talk to you offline. But this is what our rishis said. They said, look, it's not just that physical light. Of course it's there, that is there. That's obvious, almost. But they said that energy also has color. They said energy has color. Just like your eye can see that physical light coming, there's also energy coming from Surya Narayana. This is the Vedic part. They said there's also energy coming from there. And that energy also has these 7 components. And those 7 components can be split into 2 groups. One has 3, the other has 4 parts. And they said that energy is what affects your mind. They're not talking about physical. The entire Vedic concept, somebody yesterday in San Jose asked me, they said, if you can summarize in one sentence, what is the Vedic thought? What is the Vedic thought? You can summarize in just one sentence. Somebody tells you, what is your, while you're talking about all this, we have like blah, blah, blah. Summarize it for me in just one sentence. And I said, this is my, again, you don't have to agree with me, but this is my thing. I said, it actually takes only 4 words. Vedic way of thought just says, it's not about me. That's Vedic thought. Nothing is about me. I'm irrelevant. It's about everything else. So when I start looking at outside, I tell my engineering students who also study philosophy with me, I tell them, in society there are current sources and there are current sinks, and some of you may relate to that. There are a bunch of nodes, there are current sources and current sinks. My thing is, never be a current sink, be a current source. Supply things to the universe around you. Don't suck things out of the universe around you. This is Vedic thought. This is exactly Vedic thought. So the rishis said, look, that energy color directly has a correspondence to something that happens in your mind. So the red color, but this is not my theory, by the way. I can show you references. Like for example, pretty soon in Bharatiya Masa on the 4th day, we do Ganesh Chauthi. Some of us might do. We do worship Ganesha. And he said, for Ganesha, everything is red. They say use red flowers, red akshata, everything red. Ratnambara. Right? They say, why? Why not purple? He's not just for the heck of it, but see some of the color. Well, it turns out that Devata Shakti who we refer to as Ganesha, in the Brahmanda, that's in the macro universe, he is Akasha Devata. He is Akasha Devata, not space, but space filled with energy. But in the Pindanda, in the micro universe, he is the one. In my lower part of the body, all the karma comes from there. All this, Rajas karma comes from there, which is a part of our lives, right? And that, they say, has red color. So red color implies karma. So it turns out that this science, the Vedic science tells us that you're blessed with, it doesn't matter whether you know anything, don't know anything, across this universe, across this planet, every single human being, everybody who's got a sadhana sharira, every single human being is blessed with desire of something. There's nobody without desire, there's nobody without karma. That may be good karma or bad karma, that's a different issue. But every single person has karma, so that red color you are blessed with. But anything beyond that, you have to do sadhana to get the higher colors. This is science, okay, and I can, if I go off on the top, it will take 1 hour, so I'll move on. But that is science though. Question is, what is engineering part of it? So our Vedic engineers, call them that, they said, look, there are 3 things they call Mangala Dravya. Haldi, turmeric, kumkum, and sindoor. All of us when you do puja, they put haldi kumkum on cars, on airplanes, on all kinds of random things. Right? Everything we do puja. So they say, Haridra Chodam Samarpayami, some priest will say that, put some haldi, you just take some prayer, and then he said, kumkum Chodam Samarpayami, put some kumkum, and say, sindoor Chodam Samarpayami. Nobody realizes that actually is a solution they found. This is actually engineering. This is what I refer to as Vedic engineering. You say, what the heck what does haldi, kumkum and sindoor have to do with it? What has that got to do with Vedic engineering? Well, here's the thought, the thing. Every karma has to have 3 components. Every single karma has to have 3 components. Kaya, vacha, manasa. Right? Kaya, action, there's physical action. Vacha, speech. Manasa, the thought. Of those 3 things, the most important thing is manasa. It's not kaya. People think, if you do the physical, no, you get almost nothing. If you don't know what the heck is going on and you don't have the thought in your mind, so how does it apply to haldi, kumkum and sindoor? This is what the engineering part is. This is the solution. See, you notice that haldi comes, that is yellow color comes in the solar spectrum. It comes much higher than red. Red is the very first one that comes in. Whereas, if you look at what we do, we offer haldi first. You can't do randomly you can't mix up the 3 things and throw it there and say, hey, let me be more productive. I'll mix up haldi, kumkum, sindoor, everything, and just offer it one time. No, you cannot do that. You have to offer haldi first. You have to offer kumkum next, and you have to offer sindoor last. Then the other things, chandan and all those things, but all of that has a lot of meaning to it. So why offer haldi first? Because why? Because the Rigveda says that yathaeva paste tadeva bhavati. Whatever you offer is what will get reflection. When you offer, when you offer it to God, it's like an infinite, perfect mirror, if you will. So what you offer is what you get. Yatha upaste tadeva bhavati. However you offer, that's what you'll get back. Right? So haldi, turmeric, when you offer that, what should be the manasa part? What should be in my mind? My thing is this: when I do any puja I do, in the end I always ask for something. You say, no, I don't ask for it. Yeah, right. Everybody wants something. Everybody wants something. So my thing is this: look, my karma is going to come next. Okay? So I'm going to ask you for something. But before I do that, before the red color comes, before I offer that, I'm offering this haldi to you. Because I want that reflection from you. And haldi, our Vedic scientists called rishis tell us that yellow color energy is a disinfectant. Some of us older folks, when we were the kids, we didn't have all these ointments and all this things that much. We got a cut or something, my mother would just throw some haldi on that, rub it, because it's a disinfectant, right? So not just physically, arishana, as we call it, the haldi, but the yellow color energy is also disinfecting energy. So when I offer that mangala dravya, when I offer that turmeric, I look upwards and say, hey Bhagavan, I'm going to ask you for something. But before I do that, you please make sure that whatever I ask for, whatever I'll ask next, let it be disinfected. Let it not be something that is toxic for me, because I don't even know what is good for me, what is bad for me. So only make me ask for those things that is not toxic for me. And then next thing we offer kukum. So that also is part of the thing that says that I am going to ask you for something. But then, important, a lot of people, they put haldi kukum, they don't put sindoor. But sindoor is a very important part of the Vedic worship process. Because the sindoor is important, because sindoor, that saffron color, is, it's a sanket, it represents vairagya. Vairagya is not giving up things, vairagya is lack of obsession. So my thing is, look, even a disinfected karma, something good, it may be something good, right? Like I start a foundation, as I preserve manuscripts, whatever, right? I don't think it's a bad thing. And if I pray for it and say, oh, please help me do this, I don't think that's a bad thing. However, suppose I'm blessed with that. So one of two things will happen, right? Either he gives me that or he doesn't give me that. Suppose he gives me that. What happens with most of us is that if we happen to be blessed with something that we ask for, we get obsessed with it. It becomes an obsession. I start thinking, this is mine. This is mine. This is my foundation. This is my this, my that, and so on. So my thing is, don't give me obsession. Even if you choose to give me something, please don't give me obsession with that object. This is engineering. This is solving a problem for me. But where does the technology part come from? Come in. Well, what they did was they translated that as part of the puja. Or they incorporated that into every puja process. That's technology. That's widespread. Every single person in India, every single person who follows the Vedic worship of any kind, for any puja. Have you done any puja without haldi and kukum? I don't think so. That's technology. They made it mass, And same when you talk about preservation of the Vedic knowledge, my claim to you, I'm going to talk the rest of the time about preservation of manuscripts, okay? But before I did that, I just want to tell you that when you talk about preserving Vedic knowledge, we are not talking about saving manuscripts. As important as that is, we are not talking about that. In every single home, every single person who does puja, if that manasa part is gone, that knowledge is gone, then you're just randomly doing some crazy stuff with very little effect in that thing. So, if you want to talk about preservation of Vedic knowledge, I would claim that that is the part that we have to focus on more than anything else for that matter. The world of Vedic manuscripts in which I am immersed, sometimes I laugh, sometimes I cry. You say, why? I laughed out of joy. I cannot believe, if you look at one palm leaf manuscript, 300, 400 years ago, when there was no electricity, no printing technology, these scholars sat down and it's not forget about what they had to do to get that knowledge, that's it. God knows how long they struggled for that. But to put it down, just to put it down in writing, what they had to do was go and collect palm leaves, dry it in the sun, select those things that were good. They would take a metallic object, it is pointed like a nail, it's almost like an engraving. That is the reason. You notice, if you look at the lipis, different lipis are there, so scripts, different scripts. You notice that all good ancient lipis, like the Malayalam scripts, for example, right? It's all circular, it's all round, right? Devanagari, which people think Devanagari is Samskrita script. Samskrita doesn't have any script. Nagari was a script, and something that came out of it was Devanagari. Devanagari was a script that was invented for the printing press. The reason it has a line is so they can align these things in the press. That's why it has a line. If you look at Nagari, there are no lines anywhere. Because if you take a palm leaf manuscript, take a sharp object and draw a line, you know what's going to happen, it's going to split. So all scripts, ancient scripts, are circular in nature. Right? You look at Sharda script, you can look at Nevari, you can look at Bangla script, Malayalam script, Telugu script, various scripts are there, right? Now the thing is that if you go in India, there are so many places, and we work very closely. I had asked Sunita to there's some brochures, didn't get them, we can pick up one if you're interested in what we're doing. Right? We go around and we try to preserve these manuscripts. Because what is happening is this. A palm leaf is a very good medium. It turns out it's a very good medium. It's a better medium than paper actually. It lasts 600 to 700 years, which is far more than any paper will last. So it's actually a good medium. The engraving doesn't go away. Even after 600, 700, it doesn't go away. But there are a couple of things that happen, which is that it becomes brittle. After 500 years, it becomes very brittle. Second thing is it becomes very faded, very faded, where you cannot actually see what is written. Because the way they used to do it, they do the engraving, they take vegetable ink, smear it in that, they'll take a chalet and take a piece of cloth and just wipe it. That's how those things were created. Can you imagine some person sitting there with no electricity, nothing, with a sharp object and writing that thing, and manuscripts like that, we got hundreds of thousands. Just imagine what we have. Then a few things happen. By the way, this is not just on philosophy and other. We have manuscripts on Ayurveda, mathematics, you name it. Because that was the medium, that's all. A lot of people think that the moment you think of manuscript, Vedic manuscripts, they think that, it must be some philosophy or Purana or something. No, that's the medium. It's just like a book, it has everything, right? Well, it turns out that in 1906, something interesting happened in 1906. This is more than 100 years ago. The British decided that they wanted to get all manuscripts from Kashi, Banaras. That's just that. It is the British came up with many strategic things, which are, unfortunately, after 100 years of people still don't know that. It's weird. Actually, even the system, many people don't even know these things. It was a strategic move. They ran into one obstacle. They went to Kashi. They tried to approach, because these pundits, they would have, it was handed down generation to generation in families. These pundits in Kashi would not allow these fellows to come inside the house. Say, you cannot come inside. So this is what the heck are we doing? These people won't even talk to us. So what they did was they went to Nepal. The Mukhyamantri of Nepal in 1905 was one gentleman, his name was Chandra Shure, that was his name. Right? So I went to him and said, we'll give you a commission, we want to give you a commission, take as much money as you want, take as many gold coins as you want, go to Banaras and get all the manuscripts for us. We'll pay. We'll pay you, we'll pay for the things. So the gentleman did that. He actually did that. In those days, these people went from house to house, gave 4 annas and 8 annas, and purchased some of the oldest manuscripts that had been there in their families for generations and generations. He took all of those things and gave it to the British. The British knighted him for that. He became Sir Chandra Shumshure. They took that entire collection and gave it to Oxford University. In Oxford University, some of you might have gone there. Next time you go, please take a look at this. There's a thing called Bodleian. Oxford University Library is called Bodleian Library. So in Bodleian Library, if you go to the basement, there's something called the India Institute. That's what it's called, India Institute. If you go there, they have all of those manuscripts. And what happened was when they took that stuff, unfortunately, these are various lipis, they could read it. They took the manuscript, they could read the thing. They didn't even know what the heck it was, right? So they went to a scholar, some of you might have heard of Max Muller. So they went to Max Muller and tried to give him a commission and said, please come and stay in Oxford Library and catalog all these things. We're not about 1 or 2 days, we're talking about 8 to 10 year project. But they're willing to pay for that. So Max Muller said, no, I don't want to do that. But he sent one of his shishyas, one of his students, who sat there for 8 years, cataloged beautifully every single manuscript. We don't have catalogs of what we have in India. He cataloged every single thing. So they printed, they got 2 copies of them. This came to my notice in 2006. So I approached them. Excuse me. So I approached them and said that, is there any way, can we work something out? Because I'll give you one example, just one example. I'm sure those of us who come from Vedic tradition, if there's one thing, if I say what is the most important thing for you, most of us probably will say Bhagavad Gita, maybe. At least you'd agree that that's one of the most important things for us. Krishna's Upadesha to Arjuna. Well, it turns out that the oldest Bhagavad Gita Patra